Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Graduate Dentist Podcast. Now, it's been a while, hasn't it? 2025 has been chaotic to say the least. That everyone I've spoken to has just said that it's been crazy, full of ups and downs. I think we've all been feeling a little bit burnt out, a little bit on edge. I myself have had multiple instances of just feeling so overwhelmed and having this gnawing feeling of just being on edge with a never-ending to-do list. But I took some time off in March to spend time with family in Melbourne, as well as helping my brother out at his course, at a friend's wedding, my high school reunion, along with our Melbourne graduate dentist meetup. So lots of things happening throughout March, and whilst I thought having time off meant that I'd be able to catch up on all the things I was behind on, that didn't quite happen. And so I'm sorry this episode has been so delayed, but we're officially back in Brisbane. We're getting back into the swing of things, and I've got a number of interviews all lined up and ready to go. So we're going to be back on schedule and delivering our fortnightly episodes for you. But for today's episode, this is something new and exciting. And so, as I said, whilst I was in Melbourne, we hosted our first graduate dentist meetup of the year, which was also our very first time doing a mini CPD lecture with Dr. Soo-Wee Ong, as well as our very first live podcast interview, where we put it to the audience and got them to ask all their burning questions that they had for Soo-Wee, and we got to dive into it all together. It was such a fun event. Something new, something different, and we actually got to record the whole thing. And so that's what today's episode is all about. Now, of course, being our very first time recording a live interview, obviously there are all the teething problems that come with doing something new. And so please forgive me for the quality of the audio. We did try our absolute best, but it is hard being in a huge conference room with over 85 people in attendance. Regardless, I think the topics that we cover are ones that you will really enjoy. Dr. Soo-Wee shares his journey on how he got into oral surgery specialization. We talk about his philosophy towards treatment, his approach towards surgery, and then we dive into the nitty-gritty that everyone wanted to know. When do you section? How do you section? What kind of burrs and instruments should you be using? How to manage post-op complications? Ergonomics, where to position yourself, the whole lot. This was something really fun, and I look forward to hopefully recording more of these live podcast interviews where we get to have the community involved and present. I'm so proud of everything that we have created and so grateful for all of you guys for constantly being so on board with it all. And so thank you again for all your support, thank you for your patience, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Dr. Soo-Wee Ong. Dr. Soo-Wee Ong.
Hello.
Welcome to the Graduate Dentist Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me.
It's been a pleasure so far.
How's this morning been so far?
It's been good. No one fell asleep. So that's a positive. I was eyeing out a few people that was like close to falling asleep. Yeah. I was like, oh, gotta pick on them next. No, it's been fun.
It's been interesting because we've been seeing a lot of these Slido questions come through, and we were both commenting that you had a bit of a reaction. You were like, oh, I wish these are things that you should have taught, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think I've been doing education now for 3 to 4 years, and it's the same questions coming through time and time again, which is kind of good, kind of bad, because that tells me that there's a big gap in dental school. And when people come to my courses, I often ask, where did you do your dental school, or where did you do your undergrad? And I get people from all over. Some people did their undergrad in India, Pakistan, Canada, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, obviously. And it seems like a common problem in oral surgery, especially. They're all taught the same way, and it's a problem that I would like to kind of help with, because I've been through the same struggles. That's the thing. I think it's a little bit different for me because I was a general dentist for 8-9 years prior to specialization. So I can literally say that I know how it feels. I didn't go into specialization after 2 years of undergrad, so I could actually know what you're going through and when you guys are going through something difficult.
Absolutely. I think reading those questions, I was like, these are the same questions that I had. And for some of you guys that would already be listening to the podcast, you would have heard me mention before that this year I'm really lucky to now have 3 new grads that I look after and mentor. Like, it wasn't just one. It was Soo-Wee was asking me, he's like, not just one. I'm like, no, 3. And now it's like, oh, I've got these 3 triplet siblings to look after. But what's really incredible is just seeing them ask me questions. And then they're like, Eric, I'm sorry, it's a silly question. I'm like, it's not a silly question. I remember asking that exact same question. And it wasn't that long ago that I was in that position. And so a lot of the questions you guys have asked today, we're going to go through them. There are no silly questions. The only way you know is ask. You'd rather ask and learn than to not and then find yourself in a sticky situation. But
I learned from someone quite a lot cleverer than me. And he said that smart people have good questions. You know, it's not about the answer. It's about having a good question. So I encourage you to keep asking questions, because otherwise you're not going to get the answer that you want. So there's no such thing as a silly question. There's just stupid answers.
Speaking of which, this might be a bit of a silly question, but anyone that was at our Melbourne meetup last year who got interviewed by some of my lovely friends, Ellen and Scarlett in the corner, may remember a question that we asked you. And I'm going to ask you, Soo-Wee.
Okay.
If you were a dental instrument.
What? Sorry?
If you were a dental instrument or a surgical instrument, what instrument would you be?
There's a lot that comes with leaving university and properly adulting that no one really prepares you for. As a new grad with an income and newfound responsibilities we don't know what to do with, managing finances can be really tough. That's where JS Medical and Dental Finance comes in. Specializing in financing options tailored to medical and dental professionals, JSMDF is a completely independent broker dedicated to finding the best bank and lender for your unique situation. Led by the incredible Jason Savage, who personally came to my rescue and worked his magic and helped me secure a loan before I even started working. JSMDF is committed to supporting you throughout your personal and professional journey in whatever way you need. Whether you're looking to buy a house, a car, a practice, or pay off that year-long CPD course you signed yourself up for, JSMDF offer comprehensive advice tailored to your short and long-term plans. Their goal is to be with you from day one and thoroughly understand your financial needs and provide solutions that best work for you. And so if you're looking for some advice or you simply want to explore your options, get in touch with Jason and his team. A big thank you to JSMDF for helping make being an adult that extra bit easier and for supporting the graduate dentist community.
You're putting me on the spot. What instrument would I be? I would be, oh my lord.
Surely a straight handpiece, right?
Okay, straight handpiece. But straight handpiece is long and thin, and I'm short and stubby, so I'm not a straight handpiece. So maybe I want to be a straight handpiece. How's that? Yeah, I want to be a straight handpiece. Yeah.
Okay. This is a fun question. It was someone had asked. They said, "What was your favorite surgical instrument?"
Well, I was initially thinking, oh, maybe a number 15 blade, because you can't do much else without a number 15 blade, and But I don't know. Maybe that's my second one.
There we go. Now, when we talk about oral surgery, this was something you mentioned it before as well, about how you got into oral surgery. Now, I myself, when I graduated, I thought I'd be an oral surgery gun. Like, I remember writing on my resume, like, oh, special interest, oral surgery. And then I started and I absolutely hated it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you'd said to me, Soo-Wee, that one of your goals right now is to get me to love extractions. And that's why we came up with the topic of today. But what made you decide to go into oral surgery? Obviously, you're a general dentist for 10 years. What then inspired that transition to focus in on it?
I've always said that people specialize because we suck at general dentistry. And to be completely honest, being a good general dentist is the hardest specialty. No joke. Because you have to be good at everything, right? And you are held to a high standard. So I always feel that if you're not very good at dentistry, then you specialize. And that's why I specialize. Because after 8-9 years of general dentistry, after doing my my time in full mouth rehabs and ortho and perio and all that, I realized I really wasn't very good at aesthetic work. I realized I wasn't very good at endo. I realized I wasn't very good at all these sort of things. And the only thing that I kind of feel kind of excited about is oral surgery. So that's probably one. I mean, there were many reasons why, personal reasons as well, why I specialized. But that was really, from a clinical perspective, why I decided to specialize. And that's kind of brings me on to my previous point, is that you have to do general dentistry before you decide to specialize, because you need to know what tickles you. You need to know what you're good at. And you don't know that as a new grad. Well, you don't know much as a new grad. To be fair, I didn't know anything as a new grad. So you kind of need to know. I mean, what's worse is if you decided to go into ortho specialization or something, and then you realize, God, I hate dealing with kids. Or I hate dealing with the parents that bring their kids in, or something like that. You know, that's, you're done. You know, you've just committed yourself to declip dent. So you need to get your hands dirty first before you decide all these life-changing decisions. And also, you also need to realize that specialty is not a profitable thing. You got to really love that specialty. So, do I regret doing a specialty? No, I guess, because then I won't be sitting here. But that's one of the reasons why I decided to specialize, basically.
So you would have had to have loved oral surgery or liked it enough to an extent to decide you're going to fully commit to it.
Yeah.
I'm curious then, what changed when you decided to specialize in it? Did it open your eyes to realizing like you were doing oral surgery incorrectly, differently, or did you feel like you were already doing it to a pretty high standard and it's just elevated it?
I definitely wasn't doing it to a high standard.
Yeah.
I was very much uniquely taught. And you try to expand your skills from what you learned in house surgeon or learn as time goes on, but you just realize that there's so much you don't know. And I guess that's what postgrad teaches you, is that you just realize how little you know. And
common thing we talk about.
Yeah. But I also feel when I was coming in as general dentist, I was like, why wasn't this even touched on a little bit? You know, I mean, we don't need to learn everything as in undergrad, but at least touched on a little bit, so we at least know a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's what frustrated me as well in postgrad, which kind of brings me to this position here. Yeah.
And building on that, again, I'll bring up this story. I mentioned it to you the other day at dinner as well, so anyone who's on our Discord will probably have seen me write this story. But one of my new grads who was watching me the other day, she didn't have patients in the morning, and so she came and observed me. She was actually sent into my room by our other recent grad, same year as me. He's like, go with Jerica. Just do an instruction. And I'm like, oh man, pressure's on, right? This is the one thing that I hate doing. And she's watching me over my shoulder. I said to Soo-Wee, like, the one time you have to do it correctly is when someone's watching me, right? And so she was watching me, and I didn't really think much of it. And it was just like, it was a lower 4-6, big periodical radius, and the patient didn't want to save it. So we're like, cool, we're going to extract it. And I did all these motions that I was doing, but she was just asking me, and she was like, we're just commentating throughout. I'm like, okay, we're going to start with luxating. I'm like, this is how we're going to section. We're going to decoronate it, talk to her about it. She's like, oh, why can't you decoronate it? I'm like, oh, this is what we did. I'm like, we're going to section it. We're going to look for this location. We're going to go between the pulp points. This is how far I'm going to sit till I get blood. And then I know I always go more distal than I should, so I'm going to overcorrect. I'm going to do it more nasal. And then we split it, clipped it, went 3/4 of the way, everything. And it just came out. I'm like, oh, distal root's coming out, so we're going to give that one a go. And then nasal root's not coming. Oh, why? There's a curve. I'm just talking her through it. And what was really amazing was she's really studious, and so she's the entire time just writing notes. And then once I finished, the patient disappeared. I was like, where'd you go? She's like, oh, I went into the other room to finish writing notes. And she was writing essentially everything that we had talked about. And then I asked her, I'm like, just out of curiosity, like, what were you writing notes about? And then she sent me this whole dot point of like everything that you did. And it just put things into perspective for me, because I was like, oh, this to me now is second nature. But a year and a half ago, it wasn't. Because a year and a half ago, I was asking those same questions. How do I section a tooth? When do I know I was keep going? Where's the location? All of those things. And so some of the new grads that I spoke to before, right, where you're just like, oh, everything is so overwhelming, everything is daunting. I'm like, it is all daunting right now because it's foreign, it's new. but you're going to do it to a point where it just becomes muscle memory and you don't think about it, right? So speaking of that, then a lot of our, people, attendees here now, Soo-Wee, are new grads where they didn't get this experience in dental school. And that was what also another, I guess, revelation was. I didn't get taught any of that during dental school. In uni, it was same thing, like forceps, everything, right? If it breaks, you get kicked out of the room, tutor takes over and they turn it into a surgical, right? And you're like, okay, that's not really helpful because in real life, you can't do that. And so let's go through that then, Soo-Wee. I guess just starting from the basics, right? When do we section teeth? When do we decide a tooth is a surgical? Let's just start from there.
Well, that's a huge...
I know, sorry, it's a whole lecture.
That's a whole day, whole course, 2-day course. Ultimately, it all comes down to patient selection and case selection, right? Now, when we learned veneers, for example, we know we shouldn't, our first case be a 21-year-old, high smile line, thin bar type girl that is on the news every night. Right. So that's high risk, high pressure case. Your first case should be a low smile line, a 50-year-old man with a big thick moustache. Okay? So we know that. In the same vein, extractions is the same thing. We need to learn what to look for in the extractions to know that, this is going to be a little bit more time consuming. Maybe we should go straight to a surgical straight away and avoid that vicious cycle. But we, I guess, need also to have a senior colleague or a mentor or someone to help you make those decisions. And that is the missing link a lot of the times. Because that mentor also need to not just support you, but they need to share your same philosophy. Now that is hence teeth unicorn type stuff. So in order to progress and gain confidence, you need to start use your one surface filling before you go to your indirect filling, and that applies to extractions too. So quite easily, there's a lot of questions on when to section and all that sort of stuff. When do you raise the flap and all these sort of things. So my advice to you is to, like what I said in the lecture, why do we raise the flap? Seriously, why do we do it? There was a question here, do you section without raising a flap or do you raise a flap and then section? We always get taught to raise a flap first before we section. Those are rules. And I can tell you now in oral surgery, there are no rules. There are no rules. There are concepts. There are philosophies that you follow. All right? Don't follow rules. Rules are for composite. Okay? Because to do a composite, you need to etch, then prime, then bond. Those are rules. Okay? Those are steps. But in oral surgery and extraction, there is no such rule. So what's more important is, why do we raise the flap? Do we know? Why do we raise the flap? Hands up. Anyone? Mark. Visibility. Very good. Why else do we raise a flap? Anyone? Access. Those are two. You want another one? Okay, let's go.
Brownie points, yes.
If you plan to do the closure type that you want to do, if you want to increase gradually.
Sure. Yeah. So you can answer me those questions, right? So if you need to section a tooth, but you can't see where you need to section, then bloody raise a flap. It's that simple. But if you need to section something and where you need to section you can already see without raising a flap, well then you don't need to raise a flap. Do you see what I mean? So that's why understanding why we do certain things is so important rather than cookie cutter steps to approaching something, because that just doesn't work in the real world. Okay? It's like also saying, do we always overlay a cusp when we do an MOD restoration? Sometimes. Depends how undermined that cusp is, right? We know these questions, the answers to these questions. So in the same vein, when do we remove bone? Well, you got to ask yourself, why are you removing bone? Is it to get to bifurcation? Is it to get to a cystic lesion? Is it to get to a root tip because you're doing an apicectomy? So many reasons, right? So you need to ask yourself, okay, why are you removing bone? So if you can answer yourself these questions, then oral surgery actually becomes quite simple, because you have worked through the case yourself. And more importantly, if something goes wrong during the procedure, and I can tell you now, it goes wrong a lot of times. If you are able to have this sort of mindset of why you're doing certain things, then adaptation during the complication becomes a lot easier, because you know why you're doing these things and you can adapt to the clinical situation. And like in my presentation, stay in control of the situation and not just panic and just remove bone willy-nilly and just hope for the best. Okay? So I don't like teaching people cookie cutter things, and that's why I don't like answering questions sometimes.
I feel like that's a really great answer. And I think there's like a huge mindset shift. Like as I'm listening to you talk, Soo-Wee, I realized that the mentality I had as a new grad was very much the same thing. Because we learn everything as procedural, step by step. It's like first, you know, mark your patient, then you remove the decay, then you clean out the decay, then you put your matrix in, and then you put your wedge in. And I remember going into surgicals, wanting that same procedural step by step. First you luxate a little bit on the vesicle, and then you decar, and then you section. But what I would find myself getting stuck with was then it's just like, oh, the tooth's broken. You're like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And then you just keep frantic. And you're just like, as you said, just removing bone willy-nilly because you're not really thinking, why am I doing it?
But in the same vein, you know, those steps that you just mentioned for the restoration, you know, that you have steps. However, we all know that those steps can also change.
Yeah, and you have to troubleshoot.
Right? You've got to troubleshoot. It's like, oh gosh, the caries is getting close to the pulp now. What do? You leave a little bit of caries over the pulp, and that's what you do now, right? You raise a little, you don't just go crazy and go straight in, right? It's been a while. Right? So those concepts change as well. So you know, you can make those decisions now. You can go, oh, do I just, you know, do the pulpectomy, you know, because the patient is having irreversible pulpitis symptoms maybe. But if the patient is not having irreversible pulpitis symptoms, you might say, you know what, maybe the pulp's okay. We'll just don't remove the caries and then you go from there. So even within a simple restoration, you have these decisions that you have to make throughout. In a way, extractions is very similar. You have to adopt that same mindset to oral surgery. It's ever changing. Clinical situations ever changing. Yeah.
So I think your reasoning, just coming back to the why, like why are you raising a flap? Just because you want to visualize, you want access. It's not achieving that. Are you actually getting anything? Speaking of which, though, I think one of the things that we struggle a lot with in extractions is when you're stressed and when you're under pressure, the brain goes out the window, right? And you're not thinking, and you're thinking, I'm just going to luxate for another 5 minutes. And it's half an hour later, and you're still luxating, and you're not getting anywhere, right? Do you have any advice on, okay, when do you move on to the next step?
For people that have seen my live videos during my courses, Brendan's one of them, how I don't luxate for very long. I luxate and elevate for maybe 5-10 seconds, and if nothing happens, I'm moving on, right? I don't have much patience, to be fair. But that's because I know when I'm luxating and elevating what I'm expecting to see, right? So if I'm not seeing that, then I'm moving on, okay? But in terms of answering your question, Erica, to not get the blood pressure going and not get the sweat going and not having to clean up after yourself after the patient leaves, is that you have a plan, right? You have plan A, B, C, D for your procedure. So, you know, when you go into your extraction, you go, right, this is plan A. If this doesn't work, plan B. If this doesn't work, plan C. If this doesn't work, plan D. That's easier said than done. However, if you go in there with that plan, then if something doesn't happen, plan A, then you're not stressed because you know what plan B is. If plan B doesn't work, that's okay. Plan C. If that doesn't work, plan D. And if that doesn't work, plan help. Okay? But if you have these plans, you know what's coming next. So therefore, you're not going to be stressed when you bring it through. For example, give you a very simple example. If you have a lower 6 with a big crown that's restored, what have you, You know that the crown's going to break, right? You know that. But secretly you're wishing it, and I know. But you know it's not going to break, right? So when it does break, there's no surprise. You shouldn't stress you out. But you need to tell yourself, okay, if this breaks, what am I doing next? And that's your first, I guess, challenge when you approach these things, okay?
And that kind of comes back to case selection, right? You made a really good point before, and I think as a new grad, one thing that I struggled with was you get a PA and you'll cut it. And to be honest, all I would think of is like, it's a tooth. And that was it.
Yeah.
It's a tooth, but I think it's what you said, you don't know what you don't know. So you don't necessarily identify, oh, those roots are a little bit bulbous, or that's a little bit curved, or it looks a little bit dense, or you don't foresee that because you don't know what you're looking at.
I think we see it, but we don't know what to do with that.
What to do with it.
Yeah.
You don't know how to process it.
Yeah. We see it, like, you know, that case I showed, we see it, caries, blah, blah, blah. We see it, but then you're like, okay, now what?
Yeah, exactly. You recognize it, but you don't know how that changes the thought process.
It's like taking a CBCT. I know it's very sexy now to take CBCTs for everything, but you take a CBCT and you're like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Yes, I've taken the CBCT. That's what DPR told me to do. I've taken the CBCT, and I'm like, okay, now what do I use that information for? And I'm a big advocate of, if you want to take a CBCT, you got to know what you want to do with it, you know. And it's just like a bite wing. Why do we take a bite wing? We take a bite wing because we want to check this, that, right? Same with CBCT. So, yeah, you need a way to process that information. And I guess that's just knowledge and a little bit of experience and knowledge.
I think that's where it really helps to have a senior dentist. Like, particularly as a new grad, you don't know what you don't know. So what I would often do would be go to my principal. I'm like, can I do this?
Yeah, I love the question when I get text message. He goes, "Hey Soo-Wee, I got this next week. Can I do it?" I'm like, "I'm not your mother." What do you mean? Can you do it? I'm not telling you whether you can or not. You know, it's a weird question to ask. So you got to know your limits, right? Yeah.
I often say on the podcast that the more I do, the more I realize just how little I know, and how dentistry is just one of those careers where you never stop learning. But let's be real, getting the right training can be expensive, time-consuming, and sometimes just straight up overwhelming. That's where Ripe Global comes in. Founded by Dr. Lincoln Harris, Ripe Global is completely changing the way that we learn. They offer immersive, hands-on training that actually fits into your life. Whether it's through improving your preps, getting faster with composites, or tackling more complex cases, you'll be learning from some of the best clinicians in the world without having to take time off work or spend thousands on travel. And so if you're serious about upskilling and boosting your confidence in the clinic, check out Ripe Global today. Hit the link in our show notes and let's start learning smarter, not harder.
Well, let's do a little quick fire there, Soo-Wee, because I know we've got a lot of questions that people have shot through. These are, I guess, more of the surgical questions, and I've got like a lot of other topics that I want to dive into, but just quick fire questions.
Okay.
When do you decoronate before your section?
I don't decoronate.
You just go straight?
Go over it.
Okay.
There's a bigger answer to that, but I try to not decoronate as much as possible.
Why is that?
Because when you decoronate, you lose your application point. When you lose your application point, then you're elevating air, not the tooth.
Okay. How do you section? Let's just talk about a simple lower section.
You section with the straight handpiece. I'm the straight handpiece. So 99% of my surgeries are performed with the straight handpiece, whether it's a wisdom tooth, molar, canine, premolar, whatever. I can't work without that instrument, so I guess it's good that I'm a straight handpiece. But again, like I mentioned, it is a skill that you need to learn. It will take you some time. And one of the key things about how to use straight handpiece efficiently is positioning the patient and positioning yourself in the right position. That is actually one of the hardest things to learn, because unfortunately a dental chair setup, which I'm guessing most of you will have, it's not always the easiest, all right? If you ever visit my practice, it's a practice that is geared towards oral surgery. So I set up everything like an oral surgery practice. It's almost like a mini hospital, okay? It is not like a dental surgery, which helps my ergonomics and it helps my access. But that doesn't mean you can't do it either, because I worked part-time as in a dental practice for many years in my postgrad to, make ends meet, and it's possible. You just need to know how to do it, I suppose. What's the question again?
That was not a quick fire question.
Oh, that's quick fire. I was trying to give you a quick fire question, but then,
The question was, how do we section? So
how do we
straight
section,
hand piece,
yeah.
what landmarks are we looking for?
What landmarks we're looking for? Obviously, you need to identify a bifurcation. That's the most important thing. And the easiest way to identify a bifurcation is to know your pulpal anatomy, actually. So believe it or not, you need to know your endo anatomy quite well when you're sectioning, because when you decarnate and you look at your pulp chamber, you can actually identify where your roots are by the position of your pulp bones. So applying your endodontic knowledge to oral surgery is actually quite valuable here. And when you're sectioning through the tooth crown or tooth mats, you will know that you completed the section. And this is the hardest part that people need to learn, is that when you see blood coming through the section, right? Because dentine doesn't bleed, but bone does. So when you're sectioning through dentine, there should be no blood in the section. However, as soon as you go past that bifurcation, you should be in osseous bone, it should be in alveolar bone, and that bleeds. So that's the only way you know that you've completed the section. There's also the feel of it, like you can feel that you've gone through the bifurcation, but I think visually is the easiest way to know. But the hardest part again is orienting yourself to know that you're not sectioning off the wrong direction as well, which is the hardest thing to do as well. And I still do it to this day, to be fair. So sectioning a wisdom tooth is a lot harder than sectioning a molar, which is why I always recommend to start sectioning your molars, get good at sectioning molars before you try and go into wisdom teeth territory, because there's a lot more to worry about in wisdom teeth surgery, less in first molars. So get good at your first molars. You're going to encounter them more anyway, to be fair.
When you're sectioning, do you go all the way? Go 3/4? How far towards the lingual do you go?
Oh, don't go through all the way lingual. You stop at the pulp chamber. So that means that you are leaving a shelf of lingual dentine or palatal dentine, so that you don't penetrate into that space. And that's what I do. I don't ever go through the lingual. Yeah. It's a lot to do with visualization, actually. Okay, you can't do what you cannot see. Think about when you're doing a root canal, you need to have a good access cavity, right? Unless you're like those endodontic ninjas that can do things through that little hole. I've seen that. They're like, I don't know what level they're on, but that's not my level. But you cannot do what you can't see. And oral surgery is very, one of the first rules that I learned at postgrad is that.
All right. One more quick fire question,
All right.
and then I'm going to move.
They're not really quick fire anymore,
I'm sorry.
but that's okay. We'll do quick fire.
What burr do you use for sectioning, Soo-Wee?
A tapered fisher burr.
Okay.
There are many on the market, but I don't really care as long as you're using it properly. Tapered fisher.
Okay. Our next question is, we've got a lot of people asking about the surgical setup.
Oh, okay. Yep. Surgical setup. Okay.
Now, you've mentioned you've been a huge advocate for using a straight handpiece.
Yes.
Straight handpiece on a surgical
Motor. Yes. Yeah.
What do you do if your practice doesn't have one, Zoe?
You say Soo-Wee says to buy one, and you convince your practice owner that you can't do it without it. No, I'm just kidding. But that is part of the problem, I'll be honest. You can put the straight handpiece in your dental electric motor, but it hampers you significantly.
That would be like the slow speed.
No, the E-type electric motor.
Okay.
Yeah, it hampers you massively. You might as well not do it, to be honest. because it's a problem with access, it's a problem with cabling, it's a problem with irrigation. And if you have to do it on the other side, like the left-hand side, because I stand on the left-hand side when I'm doing, say, the 3A, then that becomes even more of a problem if you're putting it onto the dental card. And it's impossible, to be honest. You kind of need the separate motor for that, especially for wisdom teeth. Now, if you're doing 6s, you can kind of get away with it, but yeah, when it comes to wisdom teeth, I wouldn't recommend it at all. Yeah.
So beg your boss to be your surgical learner. If not, then the next best step would be our constant angle, high-speed one, but a reverse air turbine. We did get a question where someone said using a regular handpiece, but the question was, oh, I've heard that's bad.
Yeah, so if I put my oral surgery hat on, okay, I'm talking to you now as an oral surgeon, you cannot use a turbine high-speed to section teeth, okay? If now I'm wearing my general dentist hat, go for it, eh? But honestly speaking, I don't recommend it, all right? I would at the least use an electric motor, because there's no air coming out of that handpiece, because air-driven high-speed has air, and you open up risks yourself, the risk of air embolism and things like that. Yes, it's rare, but you do not want to be that person that's famous for it. Electric handpiece, some people say rear venting and all that sort of stuff. Sure, that reduces the risk. However, there is no such thing as zero risk. There was a recent post on DPL actually, where a dentist posted that he had air embolism, even though he used all those right things, okay? But the air embolism didn't come from air. It came from the pressure of the water that was coming out, okay? So the water pressure was so great that it went into the potential spaces of the flap, and that's what caused the air embolism. So nothing's ever foolproof, and that's why it's not worth that risk, to be fair. But I understand if you're hampered by your instruments, then that's the next best thing.
We've got a lot of questions, surprisingly, on positioning, and you mentioned it before that it's so important. How do we go through this in terms of this? Do you do extraction standing up or sitting down? It's one of the questions asked.
So I do all my extractions standing, and that's not just because it looks cooler. It's also because ergonomically is better, and also from a vision and access standpoint is actually better as well. When you're standing, you have more vision into where you need to go, whereas if you're sitting like in a dental chair, you're like a T-Rex, and you can't really see what you're doing. It's okay for the upper probably, but for lower, you'll be struggling, okay? And obviously, if you are wanting to do lower wisdom teeth extractions and things, well, you gotta stand, okay? It is much more accessible to the surgical area, and from an ergonomics, body posture standpoint, it's a lot better for you. Because, as dentists, we get neck problems, back problems, wrist problems, elbow problems. It's like that song here, shoulder, knee, and those, right? You just pick one of those and then we'll have a problem. You guys are young, you guys are early on in your career. Don't wait till now before you have problems with your musculoskeletal system to be there. So yeah, getting good habits down.
Speaking of which, so you tell us a little bit about your weightlifting.
Well, there's a question here that says, what's your clean and jerk, PV? So for those who don't know what a clean and jerk is, it's part of the Olympic lifts where, the first part of the lift is to your shoulders, and then the second part is overhead. So my PB for clean and jerk is 115 kilos. But that's when I was training, and that was like when I was really going for it.
Yeah.
Probably clean and jerk anywhere near that right now. But I got into weightlifting. Now weightlifting is not the same as powerlifting. Okay, very different. And powerlifting and weightlifting is not the same as CrossFit. and weightlifting is not the same as bodybuilding. As you can see, there's no bodybuilder right here, okay? And the reason why I got into all this is because I just opened up my practice. So this is 2017, 2018. I was doing some wisdom teeth, and my neck and back literally spasmed, and I couldn't stand up. I literally couldn't stand. I had to lie down. And this is after borrowing a significant amount of money to open my practice, and I was the sole practitioner because we don't have a lot of service to call upon. So I said to myself, this is a problem. If I can't operate, that's it, game over. So I had to go to the gym. All right. And I don't know about you guys, but I hated going to the gym. All right. When I go to the gym, I had no idea what I'm doing. And all these gym bros standing in front of the mirror, doing their, I don't know what they do, right? I don't know, whatever. And I'm like, this is daunting ass. I hated it. I hated every second of it. So I went to a gym, thankfully, in Dunedin, the service is such that every time you go in, there's a guy there to help you, tell you what to do, wash your form, all that sort of stuff. You pay a premium for that sort of stuff, but that's good. I like being told what to do because I had no idea, like, how many reps do I do? I don't know. So I was like, oh, this is good. So anyway, this guy, he was a nice guy. And he told me to do this, do that, do this, do that. And then he got me to do some squats, okay? Now, Asians, we know the squat, all right? Okay, all you Asians out there. All right?
Asian squats, eh?
We can squat, right? We can squat eating, we can squat reading, whatever. Anyway, so the guy goes, oh, bro.
You can squat.
You can squat. I'm like, yeah, I'm Asian. What do you think? And he goes, you got to do weightlifting. And I said, oh, whatever. Because I was like, what's this weightlifting? I don't do weightlifting. And it turns out he was the New Zealand South Island champ for weightlifting. He goes, no, seriously, go to weightlifting, just be good for you. So anyway, I went and to the free sessions, coaching sessions, and I honestly fell in love with the sport because weightlifting is not what you think about lifting heavy weights. It's not that at all. It's about correct posture. It's about good technique. It's about having good, strong core. All these sort of important things that, guess what, dentists badly needs. So it's not about lifting the heaviest weights, it's about having the best body positions to lift the weight. So I quite like that. I was like, okay, this is not about flexing and I can lift more than you sort of thing. So that was good. I really enjoyed that part of it. But the best part about it is that I still hated working out, right? Who likes working out, right? No one likes working out unless you're that dude over there that everyone's pointing to, right? But the best thing about weightlifting is that there are weightlifting competitions, right? Weightlifting competitions that you can compete. Now, you're not competing to win. You're just competing for yourself. And I like that because it gives me a goal. It gives me something to work towards. So my coach gives me a program that I follow. And honestly, to this day, I enjoy doing the sport. I love competing because it not just gives you the physical strength, it helps you mentally as well, because competing is very important mental workout as well. And more importantly, I have not had a single back spasm ever since. Because everything is stronger. My body is able to support more than my body weight. And that helps me in the positions that I happen to be in. And it's not about being muscly, okay? Because it's muscle under the fat, right? So I recommend it to all dentists. I got my consultant maxillofacial surgeon into it. I got 2 mentees into it in Dunedin, and they love it. They love the sport. Don't spend $5,000, $6,000 on the next best loops that you have to buy to correct your back pain. That's not going to correct your back pain. Okay? Learn good habits now. It will pay dividends.
I actually remember the last time I did an interview with you, Soo-Wee, and we actually talked about this and said, one day we'll do a course together We'll do some weightlifting in it. Right?
Let's do it. Next graduate dentist meetup is oral surgery and weightlifting. How's that? Well, who's going to be keen for that? Come on, right? You're keen.
What actually relates to you, Soo, is actually talking about that. I'm not weightlifting, but...
Yes, you are.
Okay, so I am weightlifting. But
if you're Asian, you weightlift. Okay. Do you know who is the best country? No, we know who the reigning champion country for weightlifting is?
China?
China. Because they can squat.
But my similar story actually is a similar thing. Like all throughout uni, I had really bad posture and I had back pain. And then in first year, I was still trying to balance work and all that. I was like, my initial thoughts was like, I just don't have the right lips. So I got a better pair of lips, which to its credit has helped. But what I figured last year was that, much like what a lot of senior dentists would say, it's just like, you're going to look after yourself because it doesn't matter how much dentistry you do, all the learning that you do. There's no point if you can't sustain that for the rest of your life. There's no point doing all of this if your back's going to break and then you have to take time off and whatnot. And so despite all my, activities and all the things that I do, I think around September, I realized, I actually have a bit of downtime. I'm going to redirect my attention and work on me and make myself a project. And so many people say like, you need to go to the gym or you should do Pilates. I was paying like $50 a week to go to Pilates. I never went. I knew it was good for me, but I just couldn't do it. But then one of my friends, actually based in Melbourne, one of my high school friends, she did aerials. I don't know if you know what aerials is.
Oh yeah, aerials. They're cool.
Yeah. And I was like, that's cool.
Yeah. The other one that I've actually spoken to, not me personally, okay, that is really good, is pole dancing.
Yeah, well, aerials is like pole dancing.
Yeah, pole dancing, aerials.
I'll see you at next pole dancing.
Yep. We'll want to see that. You pole dancing. That just reminds me of that reel with that guy playing the saxophone going around with the... because it's all core strength.
Yeah, that's what I realized. Like when I first started doing it, so much of it was upper body strength and core strength. And what I realized, it was the exact same thing that you said, Soo, though. It's one thing working out, but when it feels like a chore, it's not enjoyable.
Yeah.
And if it's not enjoyable, it's not sustainable. But I found myself every week wanting to go back, and then you're like, now I can do this new trick.
Yeah.
And then you keep building on it, and it's rewarding. And it's like, I just finished my beginners, and then I'm in pre-intermediate. And when I go back to Brisbane, I'm actually going to do my assessment to go into intermediates. But it's that thing. One thing I've realized is it's all posture and it's all core strength, and I feel stronger and more supported when I'm doing my work.
100%.
I think it's something that gets overlooked when you talk about it.
Yeah, don't wait till my age to do this, honestly. You have to look after your physical and mental well-being from day one. Dentistry is difficult from a physical and a mental aspect. It is seriously important.
You all know that if there's one thing I am super passionate about and always advocate for on our podcast, it is our mental well-being as dentists. There's no denying that our profession can demand so much from us, and it can drain us physically, emotionally, socially, and mentally. And some days it can all just feel a little too much. This is where our friends at Dental Practitioner Support come in. Whether you're new to dentistry or have been practicing for years, Dental Practitioner Support is here to offer guidance, reassurance, and a safe space to talk about whatever it may be that's weighing heavy on your heart. They provide 24-hour services that are completely confidential and independent, so you know that you will always have someone to turn to. Whatever your scenario may be, Dental Practitioner Support is just one call away. And so, in case you ever need it, save the number 1-800-377-700 or visit their website at dpsupport.org.au. Remember, as we say time and time again on the podcast, you are never alone, and we really are all in it together.
Circling back to positioning then and in dentistry, can we do a little bit of this quick round, the mouth, a journey around the mouth?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3.
Oh, right, okay, that sort of trick, right?
Yeah, that
okay,
kind of trick, right? Where would you be positioning yourself? The direct vision, indirect? Are you bending over backwards to see?
It depends what tooth I'm working on.
Okay.
Most of the time, if it's quadrant 1, quadrant 4, I'm on the right-hand side. Mm-hmm. Quadrant 3, I'm on the left-hand side, so I swap sides. And the hardest part is quadrant 2, to be fair.
Yeah.
So if you're a right-handed dentist, Quadrant 2 is always more challenging because it is that is the hardest corner, and it's usually the mirror vision type corner. But again, it depends what kind of procedure I'm doing. So, for example, if I am doing that case I showed earlier, the 2-7 sectional, I will be standing 11 o'clock.
And there's this one. Yeah.
You know, 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm almost behind the patient.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing the whole thing mirror vision.
Oh, you're using a mirror?
Yes, because it's too hard.
Uh-huh.
It's too hard. That's why, that's years of doing 2-6 endos came in handy, to be honest, all right? But yeah, implants is a little bit different as well. Like if I'm doing, say, 3-6 implant, sometimes I will stand on the right-hand side, sometimes I'll stand on the left-hand side. It really depends on the situation, to be fair. Yeah. But I swap sides as I need. And that's the difficulty with the dental setup, is that the DA and the spittoon and all that sort of stuff is set up in such a way that it doesn't allow that flexibility sometimes.
You have the cords just going to the other side and you're doing limbo around it.
Yeah.
I think one thing as well that we tend to overlook with extractions or early on is completing the extraction is just half of it. And what ends up happening is like you go through this whole stressful extraction, you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then the patient comes back a week later, there's post-op pain.
Yeah.
Right? There's probably one of those like, oh, why are they back? And what's going on? Let's talk a little bit about post-op management and how do we minimize those post-op reviews and the things that patients... Sorry.
How many hours do we have? All right.
Yeah.
So I will start by saying this. Managing post-op starts at the consultation.
Sure.
Because everything starts with your consenting process. Everything starts with your communication with your patient and what patient's expectations are. Too often I see dentists come to me and say, I'm still in pain 2 days later. Well, that's kind of normal. So if you haven't informed them that, then there's a problem. Then there's the patients are not expecting that. It's a bad expectation, and that's why they're complaining. All right. So first thing, post-op management comes from consultation. Post-op management also comes from during the surgery. So taking out the tooth, like we said, is only half the job. Once the tooths are, we need to make sure that the socket is clean. We need to make sure that there's no granulation tissue there. We need to make sure there's no debris. We need to have a clean wound. You have literally created a wound in your patient's mouth. Extraction is an amputation, okay? So you need to understand that any wound needs to be clean. Imagine if you've fallen down a gravel road and you have scrapes in your skin. You're not going to just automatically put a Band-Aid on that, right? You're going to clean the wound first. So an extraction socket is no different. You need to clean the wound. The whole, I don't know about Australian dental schools, but in Dunedin, I hear things like, oh, don't disturb the socket, you need the clot to form, right? I don't know whether it's the same here. But the problem is that if you don't clean the socket, then how on earth is a clot going to form? How on earth is a good clot going to form? So if a clot's not formed well, then it's not going to stabilize, and you will lose that clot. And we all know what happens when you lose a clot. So you need to make sure the clot is free of debris and clean. Okay, and that means curettage. That means irrigation of saline. I just use saline, nothing fancy, okay? And you need to have it clean. And I can't emphasize that enough. And if you want to get into ridge preservation and grafting and all this sort of stuff, guess what? You need a clean wound. You need your soft tissues to be clean. You need your, fresh edges and all these sort of things, okay? You need to inspect the bony walls of the socket. There's a question here that I just want to touch on. And the question goes, fractured lingual plate 3/8 region the other day was connected to some tendon/muscle. Was that the mylohyoid? My anatomy is shit. Sorry. That's okay. All right. So to this person, I would ask, why did the lingual plate fracture? So I will leave you that question. Okay, why did it fracture in the first place? All right, you need to answer that, because plates just don't fracture automatically, right? Think about those examples I showed about taking out the upper 6 buckley. The plate fractured. Why? If you can answer that question, you can answer why the 3/8 lingual plate fractured. And then if you can answer that question, you can say to yourself how to prevent that from happening next time. Okay, and yes, probably the higher.
Patient gonna die?
No, patients are gonna die. No, I mean, that's a way of managing that too. But it's not the end of the world, don't worry. Okay, so you got to inspect the socket, and once you inspect the socket well, if there's a flap, you need to close it well. There's a question here as well about, do you always close or something like that? Well, if you raise the flap, I would recommend closing it. If there's soft tissue flapping around everywhere, you got to secure that. Again, those are your clinical decisions that you have to make. So after that, in terms of post-op instructions, you have to ensure your patients are compliant with the instructions. Don't smoke, follow your medication regime, don't rinse too early, eat on the other side, all that sort of stuff. So a lot of it, some of it you can't control as well, all right? So if some complications happen, it's not always your fault. Don't own other people's complications sometimes, okay? And you're there to help them as well, all right? But you have to do all those things correctly. It's a multifactorial problem that there's not just one answer to. And again, that's why it's not a cookie-cutter approach.
You take out a tooth sometimes, and you see that the bony fragments are like sharp, and then people are like, do I remove that? Do I use a bone funnel? Or perhaps like the interseptal bone has fractured and it's a bit loose. Do I remove that, or do I just leave it? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't like loose pieces of things anywhere, because those things, if they are left in the socket, will just become bony sequestrium and infected granulation tissue and all that sort of stuff. That's how pyogenic granulomas form in the socket, because it's a reaction to foreign material. Okay, so again, basic principles: flush out your socket, make sure it's clean. If there's stuff there that's loose that needs to be removed, you gotta get rid of it. There was a dentist that messaged me last week actually, and she said that she took out a tooth. It's simple, all that sort of good stuff, but because of the recession, there was a lot of recession on that tooth, that the interseptal bone of the 6 is literally sticking up so high, right? And we've all seen that before. And she goes, oh, well, it's gone, so I don't want to touch it, right? But what happened? The bone became exposed because it's actually higher, and then the patient has pain, right? So I'm like, well, it's exposed bone. If you have exposed bone, you will feel pain too. So when in those situations, you have to trim that bone down. You have to trim that bone down. So don't feel like you have to avoid doing stuff or doing more stuff, right? If something needs to be cut off, you got to kind of cut it off. You got to do it right as well.
Yeah. We were saying then, like, it can be very daunting when you've gone through an ordeal, an extraction, and the patient comes back a week later and they're like, they're still in pain. It's easy to panic, and as grads being like, oh, I need to do something for them. Can we kind of talk through, when patients come back for post-op reviews or post-op pay, how do you actually assess healing? And if this is normal, or when should you flush it? When should you alvagilla? When do you antibiotics? Like, are there things that you look for? Because when you first start, you don't know what's normal, what's not, right?
That is unfortunately a very big question as well.
Sorry, it's a common thing.
That's okay. I'll try and give you the summarized form. So it depends when they come back.
Yeah.
So if they come back the next day, you just pat them on the shoulder and say, Dan, it's okay. All right. But let's talk about the most common situation, which is 6 to 7 day post-op pain. Okay, that's the most common one. Obviously, they have, you have to see them. All right, you have to see them. And what I would recommend you do is not just focus straight away in the socket. All right, ask them, what's the problem? When is the pain? Is it what's making it worse? All that sort of stuff. Because I've had patients come back with pain, but it wasn't the socket. It's just a TMJ that's sore after the X-ray, and that's quite normal. But you wouldn't know that unless you ask those questions, All right. This patient was like, oh, it's only sore when I bite something hard. I'm like, stop biting something hard. And that's a TMJ problem, right? Not a socket problem. It'll be different if the patient's saying, oh my God, I feel so ill and blah, blah, and you look at them and they're feverish, they got a swelling and it's hard and it's red and it's hot. That's different. That's systemic infection. That's different. That is IV antibiotics and admission to hospital type of stuff, right? Or you can just get the ones that say, oh yeah, it's a bit sore, throbs a little bit, comes and goes. Okay, well, that's different again. So I would say, you got to ask the question, right? In the medical world, you cannot treat without a diagnosis, right? We cannot treat someone without a diagnosis. Our job is to first diagnose that patient, what their problem is. But we are so keen as dentists to do stuff. We feel like we're not helping the patient if we don't do something. But asking questions and getting a diagnosis is doing something. We have to understand that, okay? So we need to honor the fact that we have doctor in front of our names, that we are doctors, that we need to diagnose the patient's problem. We're not tooth mechanics, okay? A famous orthodontist in Sydney once said that we are all oral physicians. I won't go that far, but sure, why not? But we need to put our doctor hat on, okay? And ask the question, get a diagnosis. So if the patient's diagnosis is TMD, we treat for TMD. We don't just give antibiotics because they've got pain. We don't just put Alvagel because that's what we do 7 days later with pain. Because sometimes if you irrigate too early, that's a problem. Sometimes if you put Alvagel in too early, that can actually make it worse. So diagnose the problem. That's what I would say. It's a good question. Good answer?
It always depends. Hey?
It always depends because it's not a cookie cutter. If it's easy, then everyone will be sitting up here doing stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So it is hard, but I'm trying to encourage you to think. Mm-hmm. That's my goal, is to encourage you to think and not just go, Soo-Wee said to do this 7 days later, so I'm going to do it. And that's what postgrad have taught me actually, is that they encourage you to think. Every paper you read, they encourage you to dissect it and look at the pros and cons. Is it funded by that company? If it's funded, that's biased, all that sort of stuff, right? So postgrad is a thinking game. And I do encourage you guys to do that. It will pay dividends in the long run.
Let's talk about complications.
Uh-huh.
And one of the ones here that's got like 8 likes that everyone wants to know.
You can like the question?
Yeah. Is it okay to ever leave roots if they fracture during extraction? What are the common post-op complications if they are left behind?
All right. You see, I have to be very careful with that question because if I say yes, then everyone will be leaving fractured roots behind. All right. So again, this is a big topic. However, what I will say here is this. If you look into the literature, they say you can leave roots under 3 mil behind. Right? Don't write that down. But it depends. Say, for example, if that root has a big apical area, then you can't leave it behind. Say, for example, if that tooth that you were taking out had a large hairy incision and the patient had irreversible pulpitis symptoms, then it's probably not a good idea to leave behind. However, if that root tip is near inferior alveolar bundle, or if that root tip is near the floor of the antrum, and going in there to fish it out may cause more problems, then that's okay to leave it behind. So it's a pros and cons of exercise. It's a risk-benefit ratio exercise. So for example, if I'm doing a wisdom tooth and there is, the inferior alveolar nerve is going right through the root of the tooth, then the risk is quite high, right? So then a coronectomy may be a better treatment option there. However, if that tooth has a big cysts and whatever, and pathology and caries and all sorts of stuff, then coronectomy is not going to help the patient. Then I have to take the tooth out fully, and the patient needs to understand the risks. Just like any medical procedure, there are risks. So we need to talk to consult the patient about the post-op complications before you do anything, all right? The old saying of telling someone that you have a complication after the fact is an excuse, not informed consent anymore. Have you guys heard that before? Yeah? So part of the problem is, I guess, knowing that, and that's where, I guess, knowledge and mentorship comes into it. So the question here then expands to what are the most common post-op complications if they are left? Well, surprisingly, nothing much. to be honest, we've all seen retained roots in people's OPGs all the time, especially upper eights, when they've been left behind. And we've all seen the retained root of lower ankyloses in OPGs as well, right? But that's because they're ankylosed. There's no parallel ligament there anyway. So there's always a reason why something will work and something doesn't work. But if you, again, look at the literature, they say that it's actually okay to leave behind. Now, if you are in social media and you're looking at some of the top surgeons in the world do implants, they are now doing this thing called root banking. I don't know whether you've heard of that. So you are doing a full clearance maxilla, okay? And you're putting in a whole heap of implants and all that sort of stuff. But what they're doing is that they're actually cutting the canines off and not taking the canines out, but leaving the canine root there. That they call it root banking, okay? Personally, I think that's just called coronectomy, but never mind. But the whole idea there is that it keeps the bone, keeps the shape of the maxilla and all this sort of stuff. Now, I've done that, and it works. So I have left a root that is way longer than 3 mils there. But physiologically, it works because the tooth is vital, the pulp is not infected, and we can leave it behind. So these rules, we need to understand the fundamental basic physiology of what's actually happening. And when you're seeing these things on social media, you kind of have to think to yourself, does that make sound biologic sense? Okay? Because we see a lot now. We actually have data overload, to be honest. Information overload these days. So you kind of have to do that. But anyway, coming back to the question, yes, is it ever okay? Yes, it is okay. But you got to, every clinical situation is slightly different. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was that the question? Kind of deviated a little bit. Yeah, it was right. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting reading all these questions they still. Yeah. It just really shows the kind of people we are as dentists, where it's just give me an answer.
Yeah, right? Yeah. It is a give me an answer question, and you're never gonna get that.
Yeah, and that's what I wonder, Soo-Wee, is obviously you said you were 10 years as a general dentist, then you went into specialising, common oral surgeon, but over the last, I guess, more recent years, you've delved into teaching. And we were talking the other day about how this is where you're really truly passionate and where you see your next, decade or however many years you see it expanding, is to continue teaching. What do you enjoy about it? What led you into teaching and answering all these questions that people constantly bombard you with?
Seeing the confused faces of everyone when I'm talking about these things is quite fun. But honestly, I like stimulating thought. I like getting people thinking, because if I just give you the answer, you're not thinking, and I'm not helping you. Because I've been to courses where it's very much do this, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, but real world clinical situation is never like that. So I like stimulating thought, and again, I teach how I was taught it postgrad, basically, and it brings me satisfaction when people like yourself said that they have to pass on that knowledge on to someone else, and they're actually enjoying well, I don't know why you enjoy it or not, but then you enjoy that time. You know, I get messages from mentees going, oh my God, I did exactly what you said and it came out nice and I wasn't stressed. That, to me, brings me more joy than treating my patients, right? Because now, you know, I'm in a way indirectly treating more patients.
Oh, yeah.
Indirectly. Okay.
So next time we take out a tube.
That is
So we
right.
took out the tube as well, right?
But honestly, that's my personality.
Yes.
Some people's personality is not like that, and that's okay. But I was never really that academic.
We talked about that.
Yeah, I was
Very
never really that
similar,
academic at school. I was really, I like doing stuff. You know, I like doing things with my hands, all right? And so this sort of stuff is enjoyable for me. But I also sometimes say that I'm an ambivert. Have you guys heard of the term ambivert? Yeah, I'm a bit of an ambivert. I won't explain that now, but you know, you guys can Google it. But I'm a bit of an ambivert. Right? So you get kind of compassion fatigue, and your social battery kind of drains quite low when you're treating patients all the time.
Okay.
And it's, you know, you guys will have that experience, I'm sure. But it's quite, it takes a lot out of you if you're treating patients all day. Yeah. You react to that, Sandra? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I feel like I feel the patient's pain myself.
You feel the patient's pain. You got to give local. You got to give local, Sandra.
They're not now.
You got to give local. It's called
local as well.
Yeah, well, there was a question here about local, actually. So why don't we kind of segue to that one, Sandra? What was the question? It says...
Let me find it.
Where was it? It's about pain. Oh, what if you can't get a patient numb? Okay, that's always stressful. Is that always fixable? Or are there genuinely cases where anesthesia is not fully achieved?
Just throw your patient out.
Throw a patient out. Okay, so this is a big topic as well. However, I will say this, in my experience, most patients can be anesthetized. I would say there's not a lot of situations where you can't get them anesthetized, because the cause of quote-unquote pain is multifactorial, right? So you need to understand straight away, first thing, is that pain or the experience of pain is multifactorial. If you look at the Oxford Dictionary definition of pain, it could be the presence or absence of trauma, because pain can be psychological, okay? But also from that standpoint, the patients can be, it can cause them pain even when fully anesthetized from other sources as well. Okay, what I mean by that is I was actually talking to a dentist yesterday, actually, at my course, and he was saying that he got this patient fully numb for this wisdom tooth, and all that sort of stuff. But he said that the moment he tried to elevate that tooth, the patient experienced pain, even though everything is numb. But then the way he fixed that was he sectioned the tooth, removed a little bit more bone, created a little bit more space, and the tooth elevated up without pain. So what does that tell you? It tells you that excessive pressure can cause pain. And this is, I'm talking from the extremity point of view, okay? So pressure around the inferior alveolar nerve or excessive pressure around the jaws can cause pain, even when everything is anesthetized. So I often get referrals sometimes of take out this 1/6 because or 2/7 or whatever, because I can't get the patient numb. Patient wants sedation. And many times it's just the fact that you need to section the tooth to reduce the amount of force that you're applying onto the jaws. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I often, in these cases, give an infraorbital block. Now I hear whispers at crown, infraorbital, that means eye. But I mean infraorbital. Infra, okay? Not in the blooming eye, okay? infraorbital, because if you think about your anatomy, the infraorbital nerve comes out under the eye and it innervates the majority of your anterior maxilla. Now, again, looking back at your biology, your maxilla is a very soft bone, right? Class 3, class 4 bone, mainly made of cancellous bone, very little cortical bone. So therefore, if you have a 7 or a 6 that is humongous, a big rooted tooth, which is often the case, and you're trying to take that tooth out whole, because you can't do a surgical, right? The forces that you're applying to the entire maxilla, it's quite a lot, all right? So I have many patients refer to me for that same reason, and I just managed it with infraorbital, local infiltration, palatal infiltration, sagittal. Okay, so when someone is in pain, again, you have to think wide, not just not enough local. You need to think, where can I put local? Is there somewhere else I can put local? Is there another reason why they're causing pain? Yes, infection and all that sort of stuff can cause that problem as well, sure, but that's not the only thing. So the only option is not just give the patient antibiotics and get them back next week, right? That's not the only option, because that's not the only problem. So that's just one of the things I'll say about can't get a patient down. And just got to think outside the box a little bit sometimes. Yeah.
I like that. It was an outside of the box approach.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily just that you haven't put enough LA.
No, always think where you're putting the LA. And also when people come and watch me do surgery, they're actually very surprised at how deep I go for an upper infiltration. Right? Because when you're doing an infiltration, especially for an upper, right, you are trying to deposit the local adjacent to the tooth apex. That's the theory. Very often, these roots are very long. And often, we don't go deep enough with our infiltration. And I think part of the problem is that we all got taught to give infiltrations with a short needle. I'm pretty sure. Is that still the thing? Yeah. It's just because they tell you to do that so you don't poke anyone's eye out. Right? That's why I say infraorbital. Okay. But the thing is that you can't give these infraorbital injections with a short needle. Because you can, but it's very, very difficult. But it's about knowing your anatomy a little bit, and again, these rules that we get told at dental school is sometimes not applicable in the real world situations.
I kind of want to circle back to a point you made, Soo-Wee, where you're like, when you're stressed and you're anxious and the patient's anxious, and especially when they're in pain, right? Nothing's worse than trying to manage a patient where it's like yelping out every 2 seconds. It gets your blood pressure going, and you start just jabbing randomly, just trying to add more LA anywhere, and then you're frantic and you're removing bone everywhere. One of the questions we got asked is just, how do you manage yourself in that situation to calm down and actually think why? Because in that moment, you're not thinking why.
Yeah.
Advice on, I guess, that more mindset or mentality.
It's experience, I'm afraid. It's knowing that I've seen this before, and I know there's an end. But that first experience can be very, very stressful, for sure, no doubt about that. I'm quite lucky now that in my practice I do most of my procedures under IV sedation. So that's helpful, but that's still not always foolproof either. Some people can react poorly under IV sedation, so it's not foolproof at all. But I think that is more of an experience thing, like you get used to that, you know what to do next, and you just got to say to yourself, this situation is not very nice, it's not very stressful, but you have to say to yourself, this is good for me. I will grow from this, right? Because then the next time this happens, and there will be a next time, then you will be able to handle it a little bit better.
I think there's also so much power. Like a good piece of advice I got given was just literally step out of the room. like, take your gloves off, take your mask off, everything's all sweaty, just go wash your hands, go wipe your face,
Yeah.
and just step away for a moment.
That actually reminds me of a really interesting story, because I have a good friend who works in Wanaka in New Zealand, and he's a little bit like that. He gets quite, he gets quite flustered. And then one time he was struggling with this. I don't know what he was doing. I think he was inserting a bridge or something. I can't remember now. But he was getting flustered because there wasn't seating and all that sort of stuff. And then the principal dentist, who's like a complete opposite Mr. Calm, okay, comes in and he goes, get out. Go around, get out, get some fresh air, go around the block, come back. He literally said that too. And he no, I can do this. No, you can't. Get out. Nicer than that, obviously. But you're right. You kind of have to just clear your mind sometimes. It didn't help that when he came back, the bridge was seated.
Oh, wow. Magic.
Magic. I wonder what happened with it. You have to just, you can't look after someone if you don't look after yourself, that old saying. So you kind of have to just go, take a few deep breaths, get out, like you said. I didn't have that luxury though. But for dental, I guess you can buy yourself a little bit of time for that. But, these are life lessons that you learn along the way, I think. And you kind of have to, I have gone through my life lessons. I'm sure another speaker would tell, you guys, his or her own experiences. And, that's why I think it's really good to listen to multiple people. And you can learn from a lot of different walks of life, really. Yeah.
Speaking of life lessons, Soo-Wee, I think we're going to wrap things up soon. But one question I always end our podcast on, that I ask all our guests is, on the topic of life lessons and conversations you have with multiple dentists and different people from all walks of life, every so often you have a conversation that kind of sticks with you. Actually leaves a bit of an impression. I should have prepped you for this question before you put me on the spot, sorry. But I wonder, in recent times, or even throughout your years of learning yourself and then mentoring others, and with all the students that you've taught, do you have any stories that you think would be appropriate to share with our graduate dentists?
Appropriate? No.
No? Okay.
But I will say this, since you guys are newish grads, I will say this. Try being the most important word here. Try not to compare yourself with others. Try not to see what's on social media and go, oh man, my classmate of just last year is doing this. And that makes you feel bad. That makes you feel like crap because you're not there yet. Try your very best not to compare yourself to others, because you are doing and running your own journey. You have your own struggles. You have your own difficulties to work through. They may not. They may just be posting the nice stuff. You don't know that. But that's what you see over and over again on social media. I'm guilty of that too. I've got colleagues of my class that are doing way better than me. But you need to be grateful with what you have, and it's hard to do that. But so my advice is just ignore the social media noise a little bit. But I'm more than happy to create social media noise of this event. All right, please. Because it's everywhere. Okay? And focus on your own journey, because you may think the grass is always greener on the other side, but guess what? You still need to water that grass to keep it green. And it just doesn't work that well when you get to that piece of grass sometimes. So get rid of the noise.
I think taking a page out of your book, so you said try, but you showed us a video that said before, there is do or do not. There is no try.
Listen to Yoda. He's a nice guy. He's a good guy. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Soo-Wee, for joining us on this episode. Thank you guys all for your questions. This is really fun. And go on. Until next time.
Thank you.
And thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Graduate Dentist Podcast. I really hope you've taken something valuable away from this episode and that you feel heard, you feel seen, inspired, and optimistic about our journey as graduate dentists. As I always say, we're in it together, so let's spread the word, let's share the love, send this to your friends, your colleagues, and those who are on a similar path who you feel may benefit from being part of the community. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so send me a message, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time for another episode.